press the record button. I'd like to begin today's webinar with an acknowledgement that we are meeting on traditional lands, which for me is the Bunurong and Kurnai people, and I wish to acknowledge them as the traditional owners. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and the elders and people of other communities who may be here today. I'd also like everyone else, if you would like to, pop where you are, your lands today, into the chat box. Just some housekeeping matters. As I've said, today's presentation is recorded, and the recording will be available on the Knowledge Hub within the week. And we will paste a link into the chat for the Knowledge Hub. For those that are not presenting today, we please ask you to switch your cameras off and mute your microphones to preserve bandwidth and avoid any unintended background noise. And if there is any reasonable adjustments that you'd like us to make in today's webinar, feel free to paste them into the chat box or raise your hand and we can address any requests. A reminder that there is a range of features available in Microsoft Teams, and we'll also paste them into a link for them into the chat. Today's session will be very interactive, and we'll be using the Teams chat throughout Empathy Lab for comments and activities. Following today's presentation, we will have the opportunity for our audience to ask questions of the presenters. To ensure that we don't miss any questions, we'll ask you to please capture these questions through our online platform, Menti. We'll post a link into the chat. It's a very, for Menti, it's a very easy platform to use. Just browse menti.com and input the code, which will pop the code into the chat as well. Lisa, please. Once you've logged into the Menti, you have the ability to post a question, and a great feature of the Menti system is the questions are on a ranked base from the interest of the audience. So if someone else asks a question that you're interested in, you can upvote the question by clicking on the like button, and that will raise the question to the top of the list. So once again, for any questions for the presenters, please submit them into the Menti rather than the Teams, and that'll be a way for us to manage them. And on that, I will introduce the host for today, which is Anita McKenzie. Thanks, Anita.
Thanks, Pete, for such a lovely introduction. Hi, everyone. My name's Anita McKenzie. And I am the Program Manager for the IWN Diversity and Inclusion Technology Program. And I also work for Southeast Water as Community and Stakeholder Engagement Advisor, managing the Community Grants Program and the Customer Community Advisory Council. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm so excited about the webinar today, and thank you to David and Erin for coming along and joining us, because I just think that each and every one of us can always learn more about empathy, and it's something that I myself want to learn more about and grow my understanding, particularly as a carer and someone coming from a multiply neurodivergent family. And so, you know, we confront challenges and misunderstandings every day, but I would also like to learn more to be able to support others and to be able to extend that empathy to them that so often I feel is missing in our society today. So as part of our commitment to the Diversity and Inclusion Technology Program, today we will join Erin Beale and David Bacon from CI&T to participate in the Empathy Lab workshop, a series of digital-based exercises designed to help build empathy for people with disabilities, whether permanent, temporary or situational. And I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Erin and David from CI&T here today. And so I'd like to introduce David first, Director of Design, CI&T. For the last 20 years, David's worked in marketing, behavioural change, innovation and human-centred design. He's currently the Director of Design at CI&T, where he's weaving humanity into technology. David works with companies to ensure design helps drive strategic initiatives, improving employee experience, shifting an acquisition or retention metric, making experiences more inclusive and accessible. David's got experience delivering digital products and services in financial services, healthcare, retails, government, and energy. David has a special interest in ethical AI and has created frameworks for CI&T clients to embed ethical decision-making inside AI projects. I'd like to introduce next Erin Veal. She is the Design and Accessibility Manager, CI&T. Erin is a user design leader with over 20 years experience. She's got deep expertise in accessibility and applies an inclusive lens to everything she does. At CI&T, she's creating a new accessibility business offering. She also manages a team of designers, creates thought leadership content on topics such as accessibility and AI, and works on research and strategy for organisations such as Emergency Victoria, Mona Museum, and Chemist Warehouse. So diverse. Previous to CI&T, Erin headed up UX at Melbourne Water and transformed their design and accessibility capabilities. Erin sits on the board of ACMI as part of the Observership program. So welcome here today, David and Erin.
Thank you, Anita. Okay, let's start this lab. Okay, we're starting empty lab. Going to start off with a bit of Portuguese. Olá, that's hello. And the reason we have that there is because CI&T, which Erin and I are a part of, was originally a Brazilian company. It was founded some 27 years ago. It is sort of the largest, I guess, digital consultancy in Latin America, and they're sort of taking their enthusiasm and their skills and their expertise to the world. I guess what is really interesting about them is they look at trying to help these global companies transform themselves into these modern contemporary digital providers and providing an exceptional customer experience. And they do that through a source of, I guess, local talent and I guess nearshore talent, because I guess some of the challenges we face are so big and so arduous that we actually do need global resource to help our clients sort of achieve them. Just very quickly, here's some of the companies that we have worked with. In Australia, I mentioned we work with like both state and federal governments, but we also do things like we do work with Services Victoria. We worked with Emergency Victoria. We worked on their mobile applications, through to things like fantastic. We do some work with Mecca, so which is a lot of our teams are enthusiastic to work on that account. Just for today, what you will require as we go through the activities, you'll need some way to actually record things. It can be on your phone in a notes application, it could be on a post-it note, pen and paper, it could be on a blank Word document, but it will ask you to sort of record something. You might just need to write down sort of numbers or something you remember. It's not particularly challenging, it doesn't require a lot of stuff, but it'll just help as you move through it. As we mentioned before at the beginning, Pete mentioned we're using the Teams chat. At the end of these activities that we run through, we might ask for some feedback or some commentary, or maybe even just best guesses about what you thought you saw or heard or did. Video and microphones off if you're not, I guess, presenting. And then I guess the other thing is, as you're all aware, we are recording this. And just lastly, if you've got your phone handy, just point it at this sort of QR code, and I guess it allows you to ask a question, which Erin and I, when we get towards the end of it, can ask. If we can't do it during this session, we'll happily sort of will respond as follow-up in a later session. Okay, so what we're going to be covering today, had a little bit about introduction, I guess, us and CI&T. Erin's going to talk about what is Empathy Lab, why it came about, and what's the purpose of it. We're going to do a bit of sort of, I guess, education around what is a disability and looking at different models of that. And then importantly, what's the importance of empathy and why, I guess, we start with empathy, and this is called an empathy lab. Then we move into the workshop, and this is where you will go into a series of activities where you get to experience what life is like trying to access a digital product or service with a simulated disability. At the end of that, we're going to have a reflection. We're really interested in getting your feedback and what you found, what you liked, but also what you would want more information in and what you might possibly change in the way you approach digital products and services. And then lastly, I think we've allowed 5 or 10 minutes at the end just for wrap up. We'll talk to you about some stuff that we can offer for the people on the call today, but also our ability to answer any questions that may pop up on Menti as we move through. Okay, Erin, would you like to talk about Empathy Lab?
I would indeed. So, what is an Empathy Lab? So the purpose of this workshop is to build empathy for people with lived experience of disability. It's to get you thinking beyond your own experience and to gain an understanding of the various barriers people face or people with disability face using technology. Now, I really want to stress that the experiences of people with a disability are very individual. There's a saying, you know, if you talk to one person with disability, you've talked to one person with disability. We're a very diverse group. And so this workshop is not meant to trivialize, generalize, or degrade the experiences of people with disability. It's purely an empathy building tool. So I'm going to get into what is disability. Here's a few statistics. So about 1 in 6, 1 in 5, depending on how you want to round up or round down, Australians have a form of disability. That's around 4.4 million people. Humans are always changing, with illness, injury, environment, barriers, and age. And interestingly, the older you get, the more likely you are to have a disability. So from the age of 65 up, prevalence is about 1 in 2. Worldwide, approximately 16% of the world's population, that's about 1.3 billion people. And so, I think one of the things that is really important to remember is that we've got an aging population and a growing population. There'll be more people aged over 65 and there'll be people living longer, and that means more people with disability. So that's why it's so incredibly important to start really catering to people, because it's just a growing number. So let's have a chat about what disability can be. So it can be visible, you can see it, it's potentially someone in a wheelchair, or it can be invisible, you can't tell by looking, for example, neurodivergence. It can be inherited or acquired, it can be temporary, or it can be permanent. And there's a whole bunch of different forms. So there is physical, which is your body. For an example, quadriplegia, cerebral palsy. Intellectual, that's how you think and learn. Dyslexia and brain injuries are some examples. Sensory, so that's hearing, seeing, touching. Blindness, deafness, they're ones that are quite commonly talked about. But also another one that's less talked about, sensory processing disorder. Psychiatric, that's mental illness, so depression, anxiety, PTSD. Neurological, that's the brain and nervous system. Examples are things like epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, autism, and then finally immunological, diseases or infections, so AIDS, diabetes, arthritis. I myself have, which ones do I have? Psychiatric, neurological, and immunological. So I'm the bottom 3. So let's talk about models of disability. There's 2 main ways disability is viewed at the moment in society, both in the medical model and in the social model. So in the medical model, it is believed that people are disabled by their impairments. The problem, quote unquote, lies with the individual, and to fit in society, people need to be cured or fixed. In the social model, it views it differently. In the social model, it views the problem as lying with society. In the social model, people are disabled by the barriers that they encounter,
And in the social model, if you fix the barriers, you enable people. So we've got this little graphic to, I guess, give you a visual example of how this might play out in real life. So in this picture, we've got a doctor. He's saying to a woman who's got a prosthetic leg that her impairment is the problem. Now she's trying to get up a flight of stairs so she can hang out with her friend. Her friend's in a wheelchair, so they can't get down to her. It's a bit of a problem. She can't go and go about her day. So that's how the medical model views it. He's saying your impairment is the problem. Now in the social model, we've got her friend saying, hey, no, the barrier is the problem. So in the social model, the steps are the barrier that is disabling the person, and the steps need fixing. So in our last image, these two friends are hanging out together. There's a ramp. In the social model, they've been enabled. So they're not disabled in this context. They're able to go about their day. So to sum it up, by removing barriers, we enable people. When you design for disability, you also make other people's life easier as well, so everybody benefits. Now, empathy. So we all have a role to play in building a more accessible world, and understanding and empathizing with people with disabilities is a first step in making change. Up here, we've got an image of the Inclusive Design Toolkit by Microsoft, and that talks about barriers. Now, we touched on barriers before, the stairs versus the ramp. So barriers can be permanent, temporary, or situational. So in this diagram, we've got a series of people and examples of how the same barrier can be permanent, temporary, or situational. So things like, for example, someone seeing, you could be blind, which is permanent. It could be temporary, which is an operable cataract, or it could be situational, a distracted driver, for example. Now, in practice, let's go and zoom into the first row, which is touch. Imagine these people are waiting for a doctor. We've got someone with one arm, someone with an arm injury, and a new parent holding a baby. In the environment that they're in that the doctor is handing them an iPad so that they fill out their information, they're all having the same problem in that you need two hands to use an iPad. So in that environment, they all have the same need to only use one hand to do what they need to do. So to remove that barrier, the doctor's surgery could simply have an iPad on a stand, and then all of these people would be able to fill in the details. And to sum it up, inaccessible products disable users. So we are using some real life examples in the environment, but it also applies to the digital world, which is what we're covering today. And of course, there are risks of not being accessible, apart from obviously it's just the right thing to do. You are also breaching people's human rights to information. And many organisations have been sued because of this, and the logos are on the screen right now, are examples of brands that have been sued because they didn't consider accessibility. I'm going to now hand over to David, who'll start our workshop.
Okay, we're going to take you through, I guess, 5 exercises or activities, each one demonstrating what's it like to live with a different kind of disability. The first one we'll look at is vision. So I guess looking at this, I wear glasses, Erin wears glasses. Without glasses, we're disabled. We can't sort of view and move through the world as we'd like to, but we put these corrective lenses on and suddenly the world becomes in focus and sharp to us. So there are about 380,000 people in Australia who are vision or who are blind or qualified having a low vision. So by doing things like choosing larger fonts, good colour contrast and legible and consistent design elements, we can help include people with low vision. So by labelling elements and having consistent navigation and designing for screen readers, we can help to include people who are blind. We're going to do a little activity now. And what we've done is I'm going to show you 2 different word searches, and they've got names of Australian animals in there. Each of these exercises is going to last for 60 seconds. both of the word searches you're about to see have this sort of vision simulator that you can see on the screen. We've applied it to. However, we've had slightly different, same settings, but you'll notice that we've made some tweaks to, I guess, how we present the information to allow to work through. It gives you an idea of what to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to move to here, and here's a word search, and this is where I sort of said you need that Word document or on your phone or something like that. In the next 60 seconds, can you find these animals? So which ones do you think you can find? There's kangaroo, dingo, koala, lyrebird, and wombat starting now. Okay, we've got 20 seconds left. Okay, now time's up. Now we're going to have another 60 seconds, and this time I'd like you to try and find these words, and this is where we've actually changed how we present the font. Okay, 20 seconds left. Okay, and time's up on that activity. So I'm going to show you the correct answers here. And you can sort of have a quick look and quickly have a look at how many you think you successfully identified. And what I would like you to do in the chat, which of the two did you think was the easiest, the first or the second word search? So just in the Teams chat. So we've got Jade saying first. Most people seem coming up second. Actually, we've got Anita said she found the same, but she's short and long-sighted, so used to the struggle. I fully get that. I'm short and long-sighted too. There you go. We've got Jeff. He struggled with both of them. Didn't find either of them. A few people said the first one's easier, both second. Okay. But I guess what's interesting is looking at that, you can go, it definitely was a struggle looking through it. So if we look here and say, what did we change? And I said, we had the same vision simulator on it. If you see the first one, we had a lighter color, and then we had the dark color for the second one. The second one, we had a heavier weight, so we had a bolder typeface. We increased the size of the font as well. So we increased that 15 to point, and you can see the simulator, the amount of blur we applied the same. So you can see someone with a vision problem simply by making the font larger, darker, and heavier, it was much easier for them to do it. And I guess the idea behind this is, yes, you can do the first one, you can complete the exercise, but it is harder work. And this is what part of it is about, this empathy, is understanding, let's make their life a little bit easier to access our digital products and services. So just quickly, some fonts here, I mentioned it previously, where you can try and use larger font sizes, making sure color contrast is applied, which can run into problems with branding. I mentioned Services Victoria. When we worked on the mobile application, one of their brand colours was orange. Orange is not a great colour for accessibility. Then even just as you start building it, making sure that all elements are labelled and coded properly. Testing for dynamic type. It'd be interesting the number of times that, you know, some people on their phones, they have, or their screens, they have the system font maximised for size. Sometimes that makes it hard to navigate through an application. Consistent navigation so people know where it is. And I guess the other, lastly, design with screen readers in mind. Okay, now Erin's going to talk about dexterity.
Alrighty, dexterity. So we'll just hone in on one issue that can affect dexterity, which is arthritis. And arthritis impacts around 3.85 million Australians. Arthritis, as well as other upper limb and nervous system impairments, can impact dexterity as well as fine motor skills. So designing to support keyboard navigation, minimum touch targets, and voice recognition provides easier access to content for people with reduced dexterity. So I'm going to now introduce our next activity. So this is about using the web with only your keyboard. I'm going to paste a link into the chat. Now, the idea of this is we would like you to navigate this website using only a keyboard. So the link is in the chat. It's the ABC News website, abc.net.au, and navigate only your keyboard. Now, your goal is to find a newsletter called ABC Yours. I tell you right now, it's not necessarily easy. And when you've found that, you can fill in the form. You do not have to submit the form. And just let us know in the chat when you're done. Now, I'm going to keep the screen open because they've got some handy tips on how you will start navigating without a mouse. So to go forward, so we'll skip through links. Forward is the tab key. To go backward, press Shift as well as Tab. To click something or tap it, hit your Enter or Return key. And if you need to select a radio button, hit the space key. Now, I'd like everyone to give this a go. So head off to the ABC website, try and find that newsletter and go through the process of subscribing to it. And then once you're done, let us know in the chat. And just for this one, I'll wait until we start getting a few responses, and maybe once about half of you have done, I'll continue on. Interesting. Yes, Judy Johnny. I know that name, by the way. Couldn't find it yet. It is. I did this activity this morning. It is there, but they've not made it easy. So if you think this is hard, imagine how difficult it is when you're trying to navigate a mobile website using without having to scroll. That's a fun one. Got Joe saying got there, but it was very, very clunky. I was no good. I would say the website's no good. I would actually. An error. Keep going to grab my mouse. Peter, yes, I remember back at uni days being taught how to do this, and one of the things we were told was to sit on your hands because you'll instinctively grab the mouse. So I'm going to move on from there. A lot of people saw errors. Well, that's kind of, unfortunately, the daily life of someone with disability navigating the web. You will encounter a lot of errors. So moving on, in the chat, and some of us, you've already let us know, but if you haven't, how easy did you find it? And also, give us do you have any ideas on how you might make it easier for people to subscribe to that newsletter? Just pop that in the chat. Jeff says, I'm not sure if it was using an iPad or he's using an iPad. Put the subscribe button at the top, says Narelle. Anna says it was very hard. And Cavell says it was not easy to navigate. Shelby says update their search function. Yes, that's very true. Some people do search as a primary way of navigating, and that would certainly make it very easy. Add action items at the top. All right, well, I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about how we can design for dexterity. So, ensuring all interactive elements have a minimum touch target area of 44 CSS pixels. Now, that's very technical, but basically what that translates to is roughly the average size of the human fingertip. Applying hover states to interactive elements. So that's when you are going to click on something, but you haven't clicked and things change. Gives people a bit of an understanding or that they can interact with an element. Using the correct heading labels on a page. If you use the correct heading, so say, for example, having a heading 2 after a heading 1, heading 3 after heading 2, people using a screen reader can actually skip really quickly through a page using their screen reader based on headings. You put the wrong heading structure, it breaks all of that function. And also ensuring interactive elements have accessibility labels. So for instance, if something's a button, it should read out to a screen reader as button. Alrighty, so I'm going to now hand back to David, who will talk to you about hearing.
Okay, moving on to hearing. You probably can't see this, but I've got hearing aids. I have mild to moderate hearing loss. It's a result, a little bit of dodgy genetics, but also listening to loud music when I was younger. Now, about 1 in 6 Australians have some form of hearing loss, and around 30,000 use sign language. So if we make sure the instructions in plain language are available in written and pictorial formats, and ensuring all video content has closed captions, we can be inclusive of people who are hard of hearing or deaf. So with now this activity, we are going to play a little video, and the first time you play it, the sound will be muted. What I would like you to do in the Teams chat is to have a stab of what you think this video is about. The video goes for about 60 seconds. Once we've sort of played it, people have a guess. So as soon as you have a guess of it, we'll play it a second time, and we'll play it again with the audio to see if your guess was right. All right, so let's hit the first one. Okay, that was a very long 50 seconds. Now, if you would all like to have a go of what you thought the video was about. So if you want to pop in chat, what do you think that gentleman was talking about? Walking on the moon, although I think walking on the moon does sound better. Group dynamics, decision-making, diverse decision-making, no idea. Teamwork, playing music in space, decision-making meetings, man landing in the moon, poker. Okay, no idea. You're not alone there, Cameron. Most people really struggle with that one. Okay, so we've got the video now. This time we're going to play. We have the sound, and we've actually, Erin has hard-coded subtitles in there as well.
Let's imagine you're about to hold a meeting to make an important decision and you're in a hurry. Is it better to hold the meeting standing up or sitting down? Researchers from the University of Missouri asked groups of people to imagine that they'd crashed on the moon and that only a few pieces of equipment had survived the crash. The groups were asked to identify which bits of equipment were most important, and their decisions were compared to the correct answers supplied by NASA. Some of the groups held their meetings standing up, and the others held them sitting down. Sit-down meetings lasted 34% longer, but the two types of meetings produced the same number of correct decisions. And so next time you need to hold a meeting in order to make an important decision, you can save time by simply standing up.
Right. So I guess, yes, there was a high proportion of people who guessed something around team dynamics and decision making, but also for most of us, we're struggling just having a stab at the dark. Even the lip readers, it made it very, you could sort of get it. And I lip read as well. You get it, but as soon as it goes to the animation, you go, I can't, there's nothing, I can't hear the content. So just quickly, what can you, in the chat, can you let me know what's one scenario in your life that relies solely on sound? Is there something which you are very reliant just for sound? Phone calls. Conversation, yep. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Visually impaired, you use your sound to understand whether someone's coming or they're approaching. Yep, Teams meeting when the video's off, old school meetings. Okay, let's just move into tips. So just a simple way, you would have seen the video captions made it so much easier. I watch it on the train, like I catch the train home from work, and I watch so many people, they're watching YouTube videos with the captions turned on because it means they don't need to use their headphones. I've got colleagues that like to watch Netflix with the captions on because it means they can eat potato chips and still follow what's going on in the TV show. You can make sure all the images and the video content also have a text description, alt tag, or a transcript for people to access through that. Make sure all audio is clear without background noise. And where you can use sign language, such as Auslan for critical content. CI&T, when we have a lot of our sort of global meetings and stuff like that, there is a sign language. One of the challenges we have, the difference between Australian versus American versus Latin American sign language, but they are very aware, and it's something that we're quite proud of. The diversity and inclusion for CI&T, they make sure that everyone has that ability to participate and it's not overly arduous. Okay, now Erin's going to talk about neurodiversity.
Yes, I am. A topic close to my heart as I have ADHD. So neurodiversity, 1 in 10 Australians identifies neurodivergent. So you'll hear these two terms popping around. They do have a slightly different meaning. Neurodiversity is the idea that people experience and interact with the world in many different ways. There are many different kinds of brains and how they work. And neurodivergence is a catch-all term to describe certain conditions that can make people's brains work in a different way. So autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, epilepsy, and ADHD. One interesting one that's often talked about but has not been classified as yet is anxiety as well. So moving on. This is going to be an activity where you get to experience a little bit of what it's like to have ADHD. And so what we're going to be doing is counting backwards while also listening to information. So either a pen and paper or a digital document. I want you to start counting backwards in sevens, starting from 700, and try and get as far as you can. Now, while you count backwards, I'm going to read you some facts about Australian native plants. And then after we've finished reading the facts out, I'm going to ask you some questions. All right, so I'm going to begin. To start doing your counting down, Australia boasts more than 1,200 species of acacia, which are commonly known as wattle trees. The golden wattle is Australia's floral emblem and is widespread around Canberra in southern New South Wales, in the Adelaide Hills and Victoria. The flowering season is spring and summer, and Wattle Day is celebrated on the 1st of September every year. With 2,800 species of eucalypts, also known as gum trees, these are the trees most commonly associated with Australia. Eucalypts are found in many areas, from the silver and red snow gums of the Australian Alps to the ancient river red gums in South Australia's Flinders Ranges. The Blue Mountains is home to the world's most diverse range of eucalypt species, and in fact the Blue Mountains gets its name from the blue haze believed to be created from the oil-bearing trees. And finally, koalas feed exclusively on certain species of eucalypts. Now, that's my little spiel. So in the chat, can you let us know three answers to these questions? First, what number did you count down to? Second, do you remember how many species of acacia there are in Australia? And finally, what species of gum trees are in South Australia? So I'll just wait and see what our answers are. When most people have answered, we'll move on and give you the answers. Lisa says, you've lost me. It's starting to count backwards. Tell me about it. It's my nightmare. Times tables at primary school was, oh, that wasn't a good time. And so a lot of people didn't hear. There's a few answers that might be a bit close. I'm going to go on. So the answers to the questions was, Dave, just want to flick to that next slide. Thank you. There are 1,200 species of acacia in Australia, and river red gum trees are the ones that are in South Australia. So we'll move on to a task reflection. And in the chat, let us know one word for how this activity made you feel. So as I said, while you're answering, this is not exactly what it's like to have ADHD, which is an attention deficit. Sometimes it's also an attention spread too thinly or highly focused. We really struggle to multitask. And henceforth, that is the attention. Sometimes that, particularly the ADHD people, think of the hyperactivity component as little kids running around on red cordial, that kind of hyperactivity, but it can also be brain hyperactivity, which means that your brain's running a million miles a minute, and sometimes you're not necessarily picking up what's happening outside of you. So some of the answers that we've got is overwhelmed, confused, anxious, inadequate. Oh gosh, Deborah, I think a lot of people with ADHD would sometimes have that feeling, particularly when they were a kid. Overwhelmed, foggy. Yeah, that's sometimes how we feel, because the world sometimes is not designed for people with ADHD. So we'll move on to some tips on how to design for diversity of different kinds of thinking. Use plain language and use literal language, avoiding idioms, metaphors, and sarcasm. We've got some examples as a picture. We've got an iceberg just peeking out of some water. People saying it's the tip of the iceberg. Got another person who, let's face it, I think they might need to go to a hospital. Their legs and arms are all tangled up and he's bent out of shape. Now, if you took that literally, you wouldn't understand the true meaning. So rather than that, you could say, they're angry. Things like adequate line spacing so that people could concentrate on the letters rather than getting overwhelmed. Breaking text into paragraphs, using lots of explanatory images and icons. Generally trying to avoid overwhelming users with options, creating more white space, and then chunking things up, using logical steps and clear instructions so people can very much understand where they are in a process of steps. Alrighty, we're going to now move to our last activity of the lab, and I will throw to David.
Let's talk about colour. Now in Australia, colour blindness affects around 8% of men, and it's about 0.4% of women. Colour is usually, vision is usually inherited and present from birth. Other causes can be vitamin A deficiency or eye disease. So we must not rely only on colour to communicate. Colour is useful, but adding text, patterns, shapes, and can help clearly differentiate meaning. So for this exercise, we're going to show you a couple of graphs, one graph, and we're going to display the two graphs, and the graphs will be in grayscale, which means you won't be able to see the colour. In the chat, I would like you to answer the question, and when everyone has answered, we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so let's look at the first one. So this was a Google trend search. What was the most searched for fruit in January? Was it banana, orange, grape, apple, or watermelon? Have a look at the graph, and in the chat, have your best guess. Apples and bananas seem to be trending. Orange, watermelon. Anyone going to have a guess for grape? No? All right. Let's got banana there. Let's put the color back into it and you can quickly see what was trending. So you can see apple. So I think about half the people, over half, 2/3 of people guessed apple. Lots of people did it. Again, not that you can't get the data and information, we're talking about the effort required to do that. And you saw how quickly it was when I changed it to color. People instantly went like, oh, okay, of course it was that. Okay, this is a fun one. We did another Google search and we wanted to know what was the most common name for swimwear in New South Wales. So in the chat, have a look and say, do you think it's bathers, swimmers, togs, cossies, swimsuit, boardies, budgie smugglers, or other? Yes, this goes down a treat when Erin and I run it for our North American and Brazilian work colleagues. Okay, we've got swimmers, togs, bathers, budgie smugglers. I don't know. That's the one we want to be true. Swimsuit, swimmers. Okay, other wetwear. All right. Let's put some color into it, and you can see the answer is swimmers. So that's overwhelmingly, whereas you're Queensland, they like to call them togs, and in Victoria, we call them bathers. It looks like Tassie's the place to go for budgie smugglers. Okay, so let's look at a reflection. So just in the chat, while you're chatting away, what's one situation in your life where only colour is used to give meaning? Think about you working, throughout your day, you could be outside, you could be walking, driving, shopping. What's one part where you look at and you really rely on colour? Yep, traffic lights, high-vis vest, signs. Yeah, we do them. Colour can convey so much meaning, and it's so useful for grabbing attention and then letting us know. I guess the challenge is when someone can't see that colour, how do we make sure that they can still have that information? Because most time we use colour to convey meaning, it's critical. Okay, someone mentioned on their platform. Okay. So tips, we're looking at things that we can do to help improve it. First one, just don't rely on colour to communicate information, especially if it's important. You can use patterns. You'll see on the right-hand side, we've got graphs. A lot of times there actually is an accessibility issue to press or to include, and it will change and include patterns in there. Labels are really important. Sometimes we can put a label in and put an arrow saying this is this information referring to that. It's really important. High contrast colours, we might have a lovely pastel or a lovely corporate palette, but sometimes we really want to go high contrast so people can simply and quickly understand what that information is. And lastly, shapes. Shapes can be really important for helping people identify what a difference and what's important. Okay, now to Erin to talk about what you can do.
Alrighty, I'm just going to very briefly talk a little bit about web accessibility guidelines. So also known as WCAG, and just for reference, it actually means all digital content. So the web is a little bit of a tricky one in there. So imagine digital content accessibility guidelines. These are a set of international standards that provide guidelines and criteria for making content more accessible to people with disability. And it ensures that digital content is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. It was, if you just want to skip to the next one, thank you, David. Recently, there was a new release, started this October, with some more criteria added to it, such as drag and drop functionality, focus appearance, and help functions. I've created a little go-to on what those changes are, and that will be distributed to you later along with the recording. And here's some tools that I think are pretty cool that are free. So first off, we've got color contrast analyzer. I use that multiple times a day. You can pick the foreground color, you pick the background color, and it'll tell you if it's a good contrast or not, and how much it adheres to the guidelines or that it doesn't adhere to the guidelines. So it's really easy. It's also just really handy for just picking colors generally. So check that one out. We'll also give you all of these links later on. Accessibility Insights. This is a little Chrome plugin by Microsoft, and it is fantastic for doing some automated accessibility checks of your content. And then finally, we've got the Wave Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool. So that's a website you can go to and plug in a URL. I've plugged in Melbourne Water, and I nearly had a cry of happiness when I saw only one error. Go and have a look and check your own website or some others. You'll see it's very, like, if somebody's down to one error, that means they really care. Because it's, they've really done a lot of effort. So that made me so happy to see that, because as Anita did mention, I did work at Melbourne Water for many years. So we're going to now throw to David, who will be sum up our workshop.
Okay, so I guess we're looking at this, and I think what's really nice is at the end of this, you've managed in the space of 50 odd minutes to experience what life is like if you have a disability, if you struggle to access. What do you think there's one thing, small thing that you think you could do, or something that you could take away from this, that you could do to make the world more accessible? It could be checking out some of the tools, it could be chatting with some colleagues. What do you think, what's one small thing that you could start to do? Yep, I like that. Listen, watch and learn from others. This accessibility is a collective thing. It's not one person's job. It's really important to say as a team, what does accessibility look like for us? What's that small thing we can do? It can be overwhelming to say, where do I start? But you start with a small thing that makes sense for your team and you can work with that. And if you do that, you'll be ahead of most organisations. Consider everyone, that's really nice. The accessibility features in apps, showcasing them, that's really good. The video of this session, absolutely. Please, Erin and I enjoy doing this. If you do get to a point where you think your team would benefit from spending 60 minutes and learning about accessibility and building their empathy, please reach out to us. Erin and I are happy to chat. Yep, find like-minded individuals in your organisation. That's a great way to start. Who are those people that you can turn around and say, either there can be a champion for it, or they might have an impairment, they might have an accessibility. They would love to be included in this. There's a great saying with accessibility, nothing for us without us. It's critical that we include these people as we move forward. It's not doing what we think they want. Let them be involved in helping design and shape and move the solution forward. I think we've got a bit of Q&A. We've got some questions.
Yeah, so I will just open up Menti and have a look at what the questions are. Oh, Lisa, are you going to help us out?
I was just going
to
ask whether or not Peter or Anita wanted to read through those, but I'm happy to read through. Whoever wants to do that, that is fine. I'll just have to log myself back in because I've just logged myself back out of Menti. Looks like we've got a few.
All right, well.
I'm just there. They haven't been ordered, Erin, so I'm just going to go
That's
from the
okay.
top. Does the WCAG tool also consider the emotion and reaction people have to certain colours, i.e. avoiding some colours at specific shades that make people uncomfortable?
So no, it doesn't. However, I think WCAG is very much a very testable criteria that is supposed to be designed, kind of for all. In terms of those kind of emotional reactions, that is something that inclusive design is much better for. So that's more like your in-person user testing, user research. So, and both of those kinds of design really go hand in hand. So making sure that you, stick to the accessibility criteria, but as Dave was saying, talking to people with disability and also just talking to a diverse range of people, potentially the CALD community. And so say, I'll give you a very quick example. Back when I used to work at Monash University, we were designing a student portal, and the library, they did not want a book for their icon. They were like, libraries are more than books. We're like CDs and interactive stuff. So they said, we really want this icon with a million different ideas of what a library is. So we went, okay, let's go have a look and talk to students. So yeah, we talked to a whole lot of students, a lot of international students, and what we found was no one understood that icon. but everyone just needed a book. So that was something that you'd never really, it's very kind of hard to argue until you talk to other people. So that was a really good example of how just talking to people made it incredibly clear how to move forward.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And it probably is a good segue into this next question, because this one has been upvoted. Is there a way that we can encourage staff to be more open about their disabilities to create awareness and understanding? This is a sensitive one, and we get asked this one a lot, actually.
Yes, so the answer is you 100% do not have to disclose. And the fact of the matter is, it's really unfortunate that in some organisations, it can be to your own detriment. I wish I could say that's not true. However, it's very much about reading the room. And if you are someone who's in leadership and you have a disability, please talk about it, please identify as it, because the people who are in leadership, they're the ones that create the culture. And if they are the ones modelling that openness, I think that's the best way to create change. And if you do want to be open about your disability, please do so. But I would never say that it's wrong for someone to not, because it's a personal choice.
Yep. It's about creating the safe environment, isn't it?
Correct.
The next one is, what are the best colours for accessibility, and is it dependent on the platform that we're using?
Look, honestly, black and white, you can't get any more contrast than black and white. Depending on the person, it might be white text on black, and other people might say black, or black text on white. A lot of people do actually get really significant problems with the glare of a big white screen, but they're generally the best. But really, that colour contrast picker, if you make sure that there is a big difference between those two colours, it should be fine. And there is obviously many different, and we haven't gotten too far into it, but there's various levels of compliance. If you want to be absolutely certain that your website is very, very compliant for colour contrast, go with AAA, which is the highest standard.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. Are there any keyboards that are better for accessibility? I know we are trialling some options here at IWN, but are there any keyboards? And I was just sort of thinking about how we navigate through a website without a mouse. In that instance, if you didn't know shortcuts and things like that, any ideas around the types of keyboards we could have?
I would say that they're very, very dependent on the individual person. So I think for things like that, all disabilities can be very different. And obviously people have different preferences.
Yep.
So say, for instance, I have ADHD, and if I had a mechanical keyboard, I'd probably go mad. But other people seem to find mechanical keyboards to be really fantastic. So it's really very individual choice.
Yep. And that absolutely makes sense. And this is the last question. If anyone else wants to add questions, they can, but this is an interesting one. Is there an easy way to explain the difference between disability and medical condition?
I wouldn't say an easy way, but I guess disability is about, does the medical condition create barriers to life? If your medical condition creates no barriers, then you could potentially say it isn't disabling. You can also be disabled without having a medical condition. So it's not necessarily an easy way. And two people with the same medical condition one may consider themselves disabled, one may not. So unfortunately, there's no real correct answer or easy answer on that one from my perspective.
Yes.
David, do you have any ideas?
No, it's user preference, but I guess the other thing is it's that personal choice, and it's the open that conversation. It's ask them what helps you, what works with you, what makes it, make them part of that decision and that policy.
That's, yeah, absolutely. I was just going to, I'm just looking at the time, so I was going to hand back to either Pete or Anita if you wanted to wrap up today's session. Thank you so much, Erin and David. That was amazing. So yeah, big thank you from me.
No problem at all. It's lovely to I saw a few names that I remember and to meet a few new people in the water industry.
I'll jump back in. Massive thank you to David and Erin for today's presentation. Also on that, a massive thank you to our audience today. A lot of input, and the chat was there was a lot going in there, and it was very, very interesting to see what people were putting in there. I think I failed quite a lot in a lot of my answers, but it shows that the tests are, the challenges that were in the tests sort of proved your point. Today's webinar will be available for viewing on the Knowledge Hub throughout the week, like I mentioned. And the Knowledge Hub is where you find all our previous webinars, announcements, and upcoming events. Next month's webinar explores Next World VR training and solutions, and we're trialing. We've trialed several of these with our members, so it's something to look forward to there. But again, thanks for the presentation today, and thanks for everyone for their attendance.
I can just add,
Thanks.
if anyone is
Sorry,
interested
Anita.
in joining the Diversity and Inclusion Program team, there is a link on the IWN website as well. We would love to have more people contributing. And thanks, David and Erin, for a fantastic session, very eye-opening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a lovely day, everybody. See you later.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.